Welcome to the ACS podcast family.
We're your hosts, Angie and Charlene,
where every week you can find new material centered around your life.
Thanks for joining us on our journey. Welcome to episode 15. We're on week 2 of gratitude. I like saying that word. I don't know why. Gratitude. I don't know, it makes me happy. Anyway. It sounds fun, like grrr is like great, right? And then, I don't know, tude is like your interpretation of like something that's just awesome. I don't know. I'm weird. So what is gratitude? Again, I mean, this week we're going to talk about compassion and grace and assuming the best, right?
Yes. So compassion, when you go look that up online, looking for a definition that is relatable and something that would help explain it so that everybody kind of understands what it is. And compassion, what we found is a good definition, motivates people to go out of their way to help the physical, mental, or emotional pains of another and of themselves. And I think that's an important key point too, is and of themselves. So it's important to give yourself compassion. So we'll talk about both sides of the coin a little bit here.
Mm-hmm. I don't show myself very much compassion at all. I'm just like, go get your shit done. There's no room for lollygagging. But we talked about, we live relatively close to each other, within 5 miles, I think, right? Maybe about.
Yeah. It's about right.
And so we go down the same main road. And yesterday, after we had met, I saw this sweet old man. And in my head, he's so sweet, but he's probably super crusty and mean to people. And that's why he was in the situation he was in. But in my head, he's just this sweet, kind old man. And he had a big book bag on his back. And he couldn't even stand up straight to walk. And I had my whole family in the car. And I'm like, Jace, we need to turn around. We need to go help him. He's like, no, we have a place to be. And all I did was think about him all night. And then talking with Angie, she saw the same man.
I did. I saw him turn down the road and I was driving and I was in my head. I'm like, should I go pull up and see if he needs help? And all these people are driving by and nobody is stopping. I'm like, should I go see if he needs help? Should I not? And I wish that I did. It also bothered me for a large portion of the day. And the reason that I didn't do that is because although I'm very open, I'm very trusting, the way that I am, I will help anybody with anything should they come ask me for the help. Mm-hmm. However, in this case, I am very afraid to let people get into my car. A long time ago, I used to read a lot of true crime books and the abductions and the cars, and you hear about how people like hold you hostage in the car.
Yeah.
And he's this old man that can't walk, so it probably would have been fine. Maybe
if he really couldn't walk.
Right.
I mean, we grew up with 2020 and primetime investigations and all of these things that our parents' generation didn't have that installed fear in us.
Isn't that funny how the media has instilled that fear, though?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the reason I didn't go follow my heart and help somebody was because the media instilled fear in me.
Right. Our parents would have picked up hitchhikers. They would, I mean, we probably weren't even in, well, no, we weren't in car seats. I don't remember my sister being in a booster seat or anything like that in the early 80s. So they probably would have thrown us in the trunk and had the hitchhikers get in the car. Hatchback, not like the trunk of a car, guys. Come on, like 80s had hatchbacks.
Yeah. My grandma had a station wagon, and Cammie and I would crawl in the back of the station wagon.
Absolutely. We sat in the it was like a treat to sit in the hatchback. But because we then got to watch 2020 and Dateline and all of those other things that happen, like we don't help people like people used to help people. And I know that we have Uber and we have Lyft and we have all these other ways that we can do that. And we probably could have called them a Lyft now that we're talking about it, right? But
those creative ideas don't come to you when you're driving alone in a car.
Exactly. They come 2 days later in the shower. Or while you're recording a podcast.
Bathtub crayons.
Exactly. But that still stinks to think that our compassion could get squashed.
just by
fear.
Right. And that is an epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Our kindness, our compassion, our drive and motivation to go out of our way to help people has been overcome by fear.
Mm-hmm.
Totally overcome by fear. And it's sad and unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. There was just as much of hitchhikers back in the day when there were covered wagons. And I'm sure that people helped them. And I'm sure there was just as much crime based on how many people were there and the crime, like the percentage of it, as there is nowadays. But now we've got social media and Twitter and TV and other things to like share the big scary news, and just shuts down part of our humanity. I feel like this is like almost a whole nother podcast.
I feel like I just had a light bulb go off. But that's for another time. We'll share that later.
Right. But that is exactly what compassion is. It's that internal urge that we both felt in seeing somebody in need.
And so you talked about, we talked about the old man, and we talked about how we both felt that internal need to show him compassion. But you also said that you are not very good at showing yourself compassion. Mm-mm. Why do you think that is?
Because I don't have room for that. I have to-do lists to get done.
How could you be better about showing yourself compassion? I'm going to have to edit.
No, I don't even mind that you leave it. I really don't know. I don't feel the same compulsion to help somebody else as I do to stop and help myself. I don't have, like, stopping yesterday was like it was pulling at my heart. It was a feeling in my stomach. It was making my brain and my body go, hey, go do this. And my brain and my body just go, get your to-do list done so you can sit on the couch.
I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but there is this video on Facebook about women's body image. Mm-hmm. And they show a picture of...
Oh, yeah. Of like they show a picture of a person's body and they're like, who do you look like?
No.
No?
This is a different one where they take a picture of a person or a woman, because I think this was geared towards women, and took a picture of them as a child. And said, say these things to the child. Would you say these things to your children? Would you say these things to this picture? And make them say what they say about themselves. Like, how do you feel about yourself? And who are you? And all of this. And people are filled with all of this negativity and say, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm whatever it is that they say. And then they show them a picture of themselves as a child and say, would you say this to her? And it's a very powerful video, actually.
Yeah. I feel like it was Dove. Dove gets me in the feels with all their women empowerment videos.
Actually, it might have been. I don't know if it is or not, but it might have been.
We'll see if we can find it and link it, if we can find it.
But that is an exercise that you can do. When you're having those negative thoughts about yourself, when you're telling yourself those things, go stand in front of the mirror. Are you going to say them to yourself as you're looking yourself in the eye in the mirror? Are you going to say those same things to yourself? Or as you're sitting at your computer, if your to-do list is at your computer, and I know, okay, so you go into the office every day, it might be a little weird to have a picture of yourself as a 5-year-old child up on your computer, but put that someplace where you can see it, where you're negative self-talking, where you're going to do that. And all of those things that you say, look at that picture and ask yourself, would you really say that? Or put a picture of your child up there. And if you're saying it to yourself, imagine saying it to your kid. Would you say that to your kid?
I had a friend, because I do talk very negative about myself all the time. I can't even help it. It just happens. And I had a friend, we were sitting there having coffee, eating snacks or whatever, and she got up and she was fiddling in the kitchen while I was talking, and then all of a sudden she turned around and she screamed at me to stop talking about her friend the way that I was talking about her. And I was talking about me, and I was like, whoa, like, rush of like, oh my gosh, like, I wouldn't talk about another person like this. Why am I talking about myself that way?
And showing that grace and that compassion and that forgiveness for yourselves. None of us are perfect, and it's okay. But you are still God's child. you are still unique. You are the only one of you there is, and you are imperfectly perfect just the way that you are.
Right.
So, and that applies to each and every one of you listening. That applies to everyone in the world. The odds of you being alive, you listening to this podcast, you being you at this very moment in time are astronomical. I don't have those pulled up, but the odds of that are, somebody actually sat down and did the statistics on it, and the odds of that are smaller than every atom individually counted in the universe.
That's crazy. So you're saying be nicer to myself.
That is what I'm saying.
We all need to be nicer to ourselves.
That goes back to, I think I've told it on the podcast as well, but that goes back to my story and what prompted me to get into coaching and to start this personal development journey. There were a lot of things, right? There were a lot of things that had to come together perfectly for that to all happen. But I did have a friend that once told me that the thing she liked least about me, she didn't tell me she didn't like it. She said, I like it least, is the way that you talk about yourself. That I talk very negatively about myself. And at that point, that really resonated. And I started watching the words. It didn't change the thoughts immediately. And my thoughts still aren't pristine, but they are so much better than they were. And I'm very careful about what I think. And I do try to be very careful about the words that come out of my mouth. Something that I used to do all the time, which was a huge step in the right direction for me, but something I used to do all the time was say, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. All the time I used to say, I'm sorry. And even switching that to saying, thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for this. Yes. Rather than saying I'm sorry, because there's really nothing for me to apologize for in a lot of those instances. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are still times when I'm sorry needs to happen. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's more, thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for understanding and just catching myself and not apologizing for things that don't need an apology.
Right. I think that, well, I know I do the same thing because I get called out by my family all the time. So I've been making conscious efforts for that. But I think that since we live in the Midwest, I know that they make meme jokes about this and videos and things, but everybody here says I'm sorry for everything. We don't say excuse me when we need to pass by somebody in an aisle. We're like, oops, sorry. Like that doesn't need an apology. You can use excuse me. You're passing by somebody. You're walking in front of them while they're reading the cereal boxes at the grocery store, whatever it is. But here, it's a lot of sorry. A lot of it. We use that word inappropriately.
Yes, that happens quite a bit around here. And I notice it. And I notice it in other people too. And just making that conscious effort to shift that was a start. The other thing that helped me find more compassion for myself and more positive things to say about myself was making my I am lists. What am I? Who am I? And putting down all the positive stuff. When you're writing down, okay, if somebody asks you, who are you? And you're saying, well, I'm kind, I'm compassionate, I'm caring, I'm all of those things. You list all of those good traits, but then you go do something, you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. So, okay, let's go back to my I am list. Is that list on my am? Is that who I am? That's not who I am. So let's shift that language.
Absolutely.
And that can go, so how does that tie into gratitude? How does that tie into gratitude and appreciation? People who have a strong sense of self-confidence, who have a strong sense of self-worth, who can find compassion for themselves and for other people, look for the good things. If you can find compassion, you can look for the good things. You can see the good in any given situation, which helps you cultivate that gratitude. It helps you find that empathy. It helps you see things from another point of view.
I love that.
And the other thing that we were going to talk about today, just for a minute, is talking about how to find some empathy and find some compassion for other people. And so what if you think of a situation that frustrates you? Somebody that you're frustrated with in any given situation, in any given circumstance, and you sat back and you said, well, what if they were doing the best that they could? the best that they knew how? What if they did it in the best way that they knew how and completed it to the best of their ability? What would that mean? What would that mean for you? What would that mean for them? And how does that shift your perception on the situation so that you can find the positive? What did they do good with it? If they did the best that they could, what does that mean? And that will also help you shift to find the positive in a situation.
I know you keep looking at me, but like, it's just huge. Thinking about empathy all the time. I mean, when I'm talking with my kids and they're super upset and they're sad, but I'm mad. And then when they tell me why they're sad, then my madness is gone instantly. Like it never even existed. I don't even remember what I was mad about. Oh yeah, it was not doing the dishes. But it came from a point of I went out to go do other things because, you know, my child's getting older. She's 20. She's got a full-time job. She's got a boyfriend. She's got all of these things. But at the same time, she feels like she's missing out on parts of our house. So then instead of doing the dishes, when we got done eating as a family, she went to go get ready to go out. And I'm like, what? And I'm so mad. But really, she's trying to escape. She's trying to fix how she's feeling because she's sad because she didn't get to go apple picking that day. And does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it takes away my madness, which my anger is really the correct word, because now I'm like, wait a minute, she's doing it because she felt sad. She wasn't doing it to be mean to me or give me more chores or be disrespectful. She's doing it to cope with what she's got going on.
So going back to what if we assume the best from the beginning, would you have approached, that's a great example. Would you have approached that situation differently if you had assumed that she was doing the best that she could at the time?
For sure.
It would have been more of a conversation and more curiosity versus more, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to?
Right. I would have been like, hey, I know you're having a rough day. I'm going to do the dishes. Why don't you go get ready to leave? Because I would have.
It makes a big difference if we assume the best in someone. Mm-hmm. A Course in Miracles is a book, and we'll, again, link in the show notes. I like to link to all the resources that we talk about. But A Course in Miracles states that every act is an act of love, no matter how unskillful it may seem, which means that in every action that somebody takes, they are either attempting to show love to somebody else or they are attempting to receive love for themselves. Now, just because you feel slighted in the exchange doesn't mean that there is not love in the action somewhere. And I know that there are situations where that's really hard to see and really hard to find. And that's where the compassion comes in. Using that skill of compassion to try to help the physical, mental, or emotional pains of someone else or of yourself.
Right. I know I talked about my 20-year-old, but let's even talk about it from a toddler's perspective, parenting-wise. And I think we've touched on this before, but when they're screaming and having a huge fit and you're getting angry because they're having a fit, but really it's just that their teeny tiny little tummy is hungry and they don't know how to process it. So when they dropped the toy, they got angry and then they threw the toy, which then hit their brother and caused this whole chain reaction of events to cause you to come in the room and be like, what are you doing? And really it's just that, oh yeah, it's lunchtime and you were so wrapped up in cleaning out the kitchen cabinet or changing your laundry around or doing the dishes or running errands that you're not hungry yet, but their little tummy is, and you forgot for a brief teeny tiny second. It does not make you a bad parent, but your anger would instantly be gone if you were hungry and you realized that they're hungry, it's time for lunch. So if you took a second to breathe and put yourself like, where is that anger coming from? Where's the screaming and crying coming from this little person who can't tell you? Showing them that compassion or that empathy is going to just change your parenting day.
Yes, it can. And it can change the tone of a situation. You have influence over the way that the rest of your day is going to go. Mm-hmm. That moment will have influence over lots of things. And we have a lot of habits and a lot of reactions. And we've talked about habits before, and we've talked about a lot of this stuff before. but you get to choose. You can reset, you can stop, you can interrupt those thought patterns, and you can make a different choice. And those different choices can have a profound impact on your day, on your week, on your month, on your life.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
So, lesson for today is choose compassion. Show yourself compassion. If you need practice at it, put a picture of yourself up, go look at the mirror and say the things that you're saying to yourself in the mirror, or even put up a picture of your kid and imagine saying those things to your kid. And if you wouldn't say them to your kid, you shouldn't say them to yourself.
Absolutely. So let us know at ACS Podcast on Facebook or in the comments what you do to show yourself compassion and gratitude. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
And the journey's not over. Make sure that you like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with the latest content and episodes.
We love each and every one of you in our tribe, and we want to celebrate your successes alongside you. Share them with us at ACS Podcast on Facebook.